of civil war that's been playing out, and this week it took an even darker turn. Khartoum's army says it's destroyed a United Arab Emirates aircraft as it landed in RSF-held Darfur, allegedly carrying Colombian mercenaries and weapons, claims that the UAE has denied as regional tension and proxy dynamics intensify. At the same time, investigations point to a mass killing at Zam Zam displacement camp in April that may have left well over 1,500 civilians dead, while the siege at Al-Fasher has driven famine-level hunger and disease, with the UN and World Food Programme warning of imminent starvation and UNICEF flagging cholera risks to the hundreds of thousands of children. So we're going to unpack all of this with Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni, who's a Sudanese political commentator and a health expert, to help us make sense of what's happening in Sudan at this time. Dr. Elgoni, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for handling Sudan issues. We need more of it all the time.
So Sudan's been through a lot over the years, and I'm not sure that things have ever been this bad. Even during the worst of the Bashir regime, were things ever this bad?
No, things have never been bad like this. Not only have never been, but no Sudanese have ever thought we will be in such a situation, because the Sudanese are very peace-loving people. And they were known for this for centuries. We don't know what has befallen us in this war, but at least there is some experience. As you know, a number of the government officials of al-Bashir's time were indicted by the ICC. So we have seen some of this happening in Darfur in 2003, 2005. But we thought that that will be the end of it, especially after the revolution that we had in 2018, 2019 that deposed al-Bashir. We felt that, those peace-loving people will now open a new window of opportunity for Sudan, this rich country, but things didn't go the way we thought.
All right, let's talk about some of the current issues. This UAE plane incident, the government is saying that the UAE has sponsored Colombian mercenaries to deal with to get involved in this incursion. The UAE is denying this. What do we know?
I want to be very frank with you. You see, this war in Sudan is a sort of a regional proxy battleground. Before the war started, 1 week before the war started, the RSF took a battalion and they went to a northern town in Sudan, Merowe, and they captured more than 200 Egyptian pilots. And they said those Egyptian pilots were brought there to do what. The army said, no, those pilots are here for training us. They are not the first time to be here. So this issue of foreigners being part of the war in Sudan has been raised against the army, that they were Eritreans fighting with the army. There is the issue that the army is saying RSF, there are people from Niger, from Chad, fighting with them. Now we hear about this Colombians, but at least I heard the UAE saying all those are falsifications of information. There is nothing like this that has happened. But also, I think the Colombian president was asked in one of the meetings, do you have people who have been fighting in Sudan? He said, no, I have no idea, but we have heard of it and we will create an inquiry. But there is no proof of this. But as I told you, this is a regional proxy war, so everything is possible.
And then in April, we saw the Zam Zam massacre. Do we know who is implicated and how this fits into the broader pattern of abuses that we've been seeing during this conflict?
You see, this is a very sad situation. When the war started, almost 9 months after the war started, there is an agreement locally in Al-Fasher, in Niala, in Al-Fula, in many towns, that this war is a central war in Khartoum. Let us not fight each other. There's an agreement between RSF and the army officers in those towns. Let us wait for the war to finish in Khartoum. Whoever wins, we are all for this country. and this was an agreement that was going on for a year. But after about a year, the Minawi faction decided to side with the army officially. And when he did that, he moved from the officers into Zam Zam camp, this is in a way a sort of creating weaponization of a humanitarian space. And then war is war. War doesn't distribute roses. It's killing. So, and the gun doesn't differentiate between a refugee and an army officer of Minawi. And this is how it happened. It is actually it is a very sad situation. Thousands were killed. But anyway, this issue of killing civilians is a sort of a shared pattern of violations between the two warring factions in Sudan. We know that the army have killed thousands, and we know that the RSF has killed thousands. And this is why we work very hard to have cessation of hostilities. We, as civilians, we are the grass over which the two fat elephants are fighting.
All right, let's try and figure out at the moment who has the upper hand. RSF that pretty much controlled Darfur, and then you've got the National Army. It seems to be going left and right as the war has continued.
No one has the upper hand. And all the military commentators are saying there is no military solution for this crisis in Sudan. It has to end on the negotiations table. Not only this war, but all the previous wars in Sudan. There are more than 5 wars in Sudan that all ended on the negotiation table. But this time the army is adamant that they are not going to negotiations. They are not allowing the RSF and whoever is with them to have a hand in power in Sudan. So there is no upper hand. Let me put it that way.
Why are these parties failing to agree on a cessation of hostilities?
I think there are 3 main things that I can look at it. One of them is the army is the political party that have been ruling Sudan for more than 3/4 of its life. And it is very difficult for them to be weaned from power. So they want it to have the upper hand all the time. This is one. The second one is that the army in the last 30 years has been pushed to have only Muslim Brotherhood members. So practically the army became like a militia for the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is what made al-Bashir scared that the army might have a coup against him. And he created the RSF to protect him from his army. This is another reason that this power struggle, everyone can't see the other one sitting on that chair. The third one is, as I told you earlier, that this regional involvement in Sudan. Egypt has interest in Sudan, the Emirates has interest in Sudan, Chad has interest in Sudan, Ethiopia. So South Sudan, all those are actually intermingling in it directly or indirectly. And this is why we find it very difficult to bring all this rainbow of interest to a central place.
Dr. Hamdok was in South Africa recently. I actually had the opportunity to meet him, and he was talking about the demise of democracy. Tell me about whether his visit had any useful outcome. I'm sure he engaged with South African authorities.
You see, this war is a setback to the democratization process that have started in Sudan under the chairmanship of Dr. Hamdok. And he has done a lot to Sudan. He has taken Sudan off, bringing him back into the international community. He brought programs in Sudan that are supporting the poor. He stabilized the currency. He did a lot of things in a very short period. But unfortunately, the army officers and the Muslim Brotherhood who were under the ground trying to pull him down. His visit here was part of the effort of bringing an end to the war. As you know, 2 years ago, the civilians under the chairmanship of Hamdok have wrote down a sort of a roadmap to end the war, and gave this roadmap to the army, to Burhan, and gave another copy to Hemeti and asked them, please, can we sit together and create an end? At least let us have a ceasefire. Both of them verbally agreed. But then when they came to sign, only Hemeti came and signed that he is agreeing to stop the war and he will do whatever he wants. So practically he supported a move towards a civilian government. But al-Burhan refused completely. And this is what created some sort of alignment between the civilians of RSF. Why? Because RSF, all through the war, he's always accepting any call for ceasefires. But the army, all through the war until today, they are always against the war. So Hamdok, when he came here, South Africa is one of the democracies of Africa, and he had good discussions here. There is good support for it, especially the media in South Africa has spread new information that people didn't have directly from Dr. Hamdok and his team. The discussions were good, and we hope that the efforts of South Africa within the African Union and beyond the African Union will help us to come to a ceasefire soon.
South Africa has been involved in helping Sudan find its feet in previous years. I remember President Jacob Zuma on a mission there. I think he was still deputy president at the time. Is there anything more that South Africa can do?
You see, a few months ago, there was a meeting in Pretoria, a conference on peace in Africa, headed by President Mbeki. And President Mbeki succeeded in inviting both the Sudanese government and the RSF. And both of them were here, and he was almost bringing them together to a ceasefire, to sit together and discuss a ceasefire. But suddenly, the army decided not to go forward with the, we don't know what happened. But South Africa has never stopped giving Sudan an opportunity for peace and development. But it is very sad. Politics is politics. But we should not despair. South Africa should continue doing this on political grounds, should continue doing humanitarian support, and we look forward to its support all the time.
Is there a side, do you think, that's more culpable than the other? The RSF has now formed this parallel government, and as you've been saying, they seem each time to pull back to any agreement that's put on the table. But at the same time, the national government, as it is constituted at the moment, also seized power, essentially in a coup. So both perhaps not legitimate, but is there one more culpable than the other in terms of prolonging this conflict?
As I told you, the military are the party, the political party that has governed Sudan all its life. So if there is a culpable, it is the military. This is one. Two, what is happening now in Western Sudan is a sort of multifaceted strategy of negotiation tactic. What the civilians have found is that RSF is always prone to agree to a ceasefire. And they wanted to keep him in that field, not to go and openly and say, I am not. So they are working with him to try and produce a civilian government in the areas that are not governed by the army. But let me also mention this point, that the army more than a year ago have decided to let go of Western Sudan. So when they change the currency, they refuse to give it to Western Sudan. When the IDs and things, they refuse to give them. So they practically partitioned Sudan about a year ago, but not openly, but in practice. So what is happening now, the people in all those areas of Darfur, Kordofan and South, the Blue Nile, they are saying, we need service. who will give us a service? So this government of that has been is going on is trying to provide services in areas that the government of Port Sudan is refusing to produce or refusing to recognize people in those areas. It is a complex things, but for me, I feel it has put a lot of pressure on Port Sudan to come to the negotiating table, and I look forward to them pushing more to bring the army to the negotiations table.
What about the civilians? I mean, 2018, 2019, I have a vivid image of a woman wearing white and became a symbol of resistance and a new order as Bashir's government came to an end. There was so much hope in the air, and all of us held our breath for a moment. Where is it now?
You see, let me be very frank with you. I can say firmly that almost 90% of the Sudanese were part of the revolution in Sudan, inside Sudan and outside Sudan. There is no capital in the world where the nationals and the Sudanese in that country have not been marching in support of the revolution in Sudan. But unfortunately, as I told you, the army refused to be wind of power and created this war that we are suffering from now. Civilians, actually, this war is committed against civilians. Whoever is killed by the army is a Sudanese civilian. Whoever is killed by the RSF is a Sudanese civilian. And there is no civilian who is holding a gun. We are only speaking and promoting peace and security. So the situation is like this. We are now dispersed in so many cities in Sudan and in so many cities out Sudan under very difficult situations. And we don't see any light of hope at the end of the tunnel as I speak to you now. It is something very depressing. Many Sudanese have used all their resources, and it is very difficult for the civilians.
We're hearing reports that former Bashir supporters are staging some kind of political comeback. Is that happening, and how might this shape Sudan's future governance, especially also given, as you've described, that the RSF actually were handpicked by Bashir himself?
It is true, the National Party is having a comeback. As I told you, in the 30 years of their rule over Bashir, they have put their people in every important position in Sudan, civilian or military. And they refuse the winning of power. And actually, as we are talking now, al-Bashir and all the people who have been indicted by the ICC, who were in prison, are now all of them released and walking normally among the people, because this government is not thinking of any peace in Sudan. They are saying it very clearly. Either we come back to power or the Sudan can be disentangled. We have no problem. If you leave us only with two cities, we will rule those two cities. Actually, one of the generals of the army said, they asked him, when is this war going to stop? He said openly, if the 44 million Sudanese have died in this war, we are not going to stop the war.
Wow.
So they are adamant that they are continuing this fighting. And I think there must be a day when this thing is going to stop.
At the moment, Gaza is very much in the news in terms of aid being prevented to get to Palestinians on the Gaza Strip, and that we're seeing starvation playing out there. This is happening in Sudan right now.
It's not only starvation. Actually, UNICEF is saying there is the dual action of starvation and cholera in Sudan. Khartoum alone, there is more than 7,000 cases reported in Khartoum, 200 deaths. And the other state cities, there's the same. But no one is reporting about it. People are dying like flies. And we know just last week in Khartoum, there were a big area that was a football pitch before. They found there are thousands of people who have been buried there. There are so many families who buried their members inside their houses because they are unable to take them to the burying spaces. So the death toll is huge. No one knows about it, and it is still continuing. And both parties, both military factions, are party to this, to what is happening now. You see, one of the disasters that has happened in Sudan is that there is an army faction that was with the RSF, and he is the one who went and occupied Jazeera State. And he created huge atrocities. Villages were just decimated. After 6 months, he was called to al-Bashir's side. He moved out of RSF and he went back to the army, and the army celebrated that this man came back. So practically this war, there are so many things that we don't know. This man pretended that he's an RSF, and he created atrocities and came back as if he was given a job to do within the RSF. So this war, we don't know a lot of what is happening. This power struggle is very strange.
Darfur was the scene of a massive genocide in decades past. And Omar al-Bashir needs to answer at the International Court of Justice. Is there a genocide taking place even now? We hear reports of RSF targeting ethnic black Africans. And on top of that, gender-based violence, rapes taking place.
You see, the problem of Sudan is like an elephant. They said they tied the eyes of 5 people and asked them to tell what is that they are holding in their hands. And the one who was holding the foot of the leg of the elephant said something. The one who was holding the ear said something different. The one who was holding the tail said something different. Each statement in itself is true, but it is not telling the whole story of the thing. So what I want to tell you is this, that this problem of Sudan, when we speak about it, that there are atrocities that definitely done by the RSF, but that is not the whole story. There is atrocities that were done by the army. That is not the whole story. There are atrocities committed by the civilians themselves, who started looting their neighbors and the neighborhoods. Okay? And this is the fact, but it is not telling the whole story. There are people who are trying to stop this war, but it's not the whole story. There are countries who are publicly saying we want the war to stop, but under the table they are doing something else. So there are so many statements about the war of Sudan that are true, but they are not telling the full picture. The full picture is that we as civilians are suffering in Sudan. There is no one who is going to win this war militarily, and that everyone must pull their effort together to have a cessation of hostilities in Sudan.
All right. So sadly, we run out of time, but perhaps if you could paint a picture for us of if what's carrying on right now carries on, what do you see happening? And also what needs to happen to stop this conflict and perhaps return Sudan to some kind of normality?
I will start by a best case scenario, because I am an optimistic guy. We expect that there will be de-escalation of army activities in hotspots, especially like El Fashir, Al Ubaid, some areas so that people can have peace and do things. We look forward for a coordinated diplomatic effort. It has already started. We were very optimistic last week that there was a meeting in the US that will handle the Sudan issues, and we felt very optimistic about it, but in the last moment it was. So we are hoping that meeting will be happening soon and creating but the most important thing for us is that we need an enhanced humanitarian delivery to the Sudanese within Sudan and outside Sudan. And I hope that South Africa should collect as much humanitarian support that they can do to help the Sudanese who are there. The worst case scenario is that the process of dividing Sudan that was started by Port Sudan government behavior might be the end result of this, and we go into a Libya scenario where we will have two governments in two capitals in Sudan.
Wow. Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for giving us some clarity on this crisis that's taking place in Sudan. And let's hope that if we continue to talk about it, that something may be done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and I look forward that you are being listened to in many African